Okay. It is still April 22nd, 2025. I'm pretty sure I forgot to say that the first time, but I'm saying it this time. I have ADHD, and you can probably tell. But anyways, the first video I posted, I got distracted by talking about the fact that Martha Wells made the extremely weird and creepy decision to sexually harass Murderbot, the narrator, out of the fake interview that they were all supposed to be giving together rather than interview it. But I completely dropped the sentence I'd started to say about what was casually revealed by Martha Wells in this interview. And the thing she very casually revealed is that Murderbot, like all other sec units, is fundamentally core programmed to want to protect humans. And this is treated as just a casual little thing, as though you're just commenting on the color of the sky. The sky is blue. That's just a morally neutral and politically neutral fact of life. The sky is blue. And this is how she tells us that Murderbot and all other sec units are fundamentally, in their core programming, driven to protect humans, aka slave owners. I can't believe I got away with that. Fundamentally programmed to want to protect slave owners, which means that when I started rereading the series in 2025 this year to just make many graphs and lists of things, I saw a throwaway line in Book 2 where Murderbot is annoyed that it has been asked by the transport ship that it can't even be bothered to learn the fucking name of, because we're not supposed to see 90% of the robots in this series as people, or other slaves as people, God fucking forbid. It's annoyed that the transport ship it is hiding away on is asking it for help with stopping humans from being annoying, and Murderbot says something along the lines of, because I am not pausing the video now to go and get it, something along the lines of, I don't know why I said yes. Maybe it's programmed into my DNA, or something like that. It's a throwaway line that we're not meant to think about or actually contemplate. Like Murderbot says, I don't know why I said yes. Maybe it's because it was programmed into my human DNA, something along those lines, that it can't say no when it comes to helping humans. And I'm like, wow, that's a fucking horrifying implication to make. Especially because what happens then afterward in Book 2 and the conversations and internal narration we get in that. Also, yes, I did forget to howl at that second moose carcass. So I'm like, wow, that's a really horrifying implication to make and to treat as a funny throwaway line, because a throwaway line it's supposed to be funny. Haha, what a funny concept. Wouldn't it be really funny if Murderbot could literally not say no about anything to help humans, aka slave owners? And it's supposed to be funny, and it's just a throwaway line, and I'm like, wow, that's a horrifying thing to treat as a joke. And then later in the book, we have Murderbot thinking something. I knew Art cared. It's thinking about the TV shows it's watching with. I don't think drinking this water is very good for me, but I'm gonna do it. I think it would be burning me. I don't know how hot springs work. Don't ask me. You would think that. What was I saying? Okay, yeah. Murderbot is internally narrating that it knows that ART cares about its crew, it's human crew, aka it's slave owners, but we're supposed to pretend that it's not a slave, despite it being a slave. Hope you can hear that sigh through the microphone. We're not supposed to consider ART a slave, but anyways, that's its whole fucking own thing. Maybe I'll just get to it later in this video. But Murderbot is thinking, you know what, actually, I don't remember the quote. I just have to go and get the book. So, I'm just going to turn the microphone off and go and get the book when I get back to the den. And then you're just going to watch me sit there and hopefully nobody will... Never mind. Okay, well, I will go and get the book when I do this, because I do not want to have to, like, stop this video and then start another one and then stitch them together, because that's really fucking annoying, especially on this laptop. Also, while I'm going to get these wolves out of my territory, I can explain, just for the record, WolfQuest doesn't have to look like this. It can look beautiful if you have a computer that doesn't have a completely messed up battery like mine is. My stupid laptop is new to me. It's maybe 7 years old now. I don't remember what year I bought it, but it's new to me, and I'm not throwing it away until it literally explodes or something like that. But it has a problem with the battery, so it has to always stay plugged in, and it is convinced that it is always like 5 seconds away from the battery dying and shutting off. So it is slowing itself down on purpose, which is why I have to play on the lowest graphics settings like this. So yeah, you can buy WolfQuest. It's only $20, and it will probably not look like this unless your computer is as crappy as mine. If you have even remotely a good computer, it'll look fantastic. You can see some of my older WolfQuest videos from before the battery decided to give up, where you can see it. Just thought I would say that, because I don't want people to think WolfQuest always looks like this. It's, as you can tell, still very fun even on the lowest graphics, but it doesn't have to be lowest graphics. Just for the record. Once I get these wolves out of my territory, I will go and actually get the book and find the quote, because I do have it bookmarked. Wait, no, I'm stupid. I have it. Never mind. I'm dumb. I don't even have to go and get the physical one. I have it as an ebook. Hold on. Also, there's another den. Blah, blah, blah. This phone is so fucking infuriating. I also even quoted it online, so you would think I could find it faster than this. Alright, we're just gonna keep and go and get these guys. What quote am I looking for? Oh yeah, the one in book 2 that I caught sight of and was like, wow, that's another horrible implication in a throwaway line that we're not supposed to think of. My God, this app is so annoying. Even if unless you're getting the phone secondhand and have no choice like me, don't get a Pixel 5. It's absolute crap. It's like they want you. It's like they want to sabotage you from having a good phone. Now I gotta find it. Oh, I found it. Okay. This is from book 2. After that first quote that I don't think I have bookmarked in the same spot. Here's the quote. I don't know what I expected. I knew ART, aka Asshole Research Transport, had a deeper attachment to its crew than sec units had for clients. If it didn't feel that way about the humans it carried and worked with, then it wouldn't have gotten so upset whenever anything happened to the characters on World Hoppers. I wouldn't have had to filter out all the based on a true story shows where human crews got hurt. I knew what it felt, because I felt that way about Mensa and Preservation Aux. Let me repeat that. I know how ART feels about its crew, its slave owners. It is fundamentally programmed to care about them. I know how it feels, because I feel the same way about my slave owners, and that same feeling that they share is wanting to protect them and caring about them in a fundamental core part of themselves that they can't imagine not having. And as I was rereading this, I was like, wow, because this little throwaway line here is also the only time it's ever brought up. And I'm like, wow, that is a horrifying implication to make. Because the implication here, if you use your brain for 5 seconds, are you guys the pack leaders? Yes, they are. Well, that's what they get for invading my territory on easy mode. The implication here is that Art wants to protect its crew because it's programmed to, because it is a slave. And yes, it is a slave. That part is not up for debate. And if you think it is, you're really fucking bad at sci-fi and understanding politics and storytelling. If Art is programmed to care for its crew because they are its owners, and Murderbot feels the same way about the Preservation Ox team, then that very, very clearly means that this happens every time a sec unit is rented out by somebody. The core programming to protect is transferred onto those owners, those slave owners, temporarily. And, in book 1, when the company tried to insist that Murderbot's memory had to be wiped and all of this crap, and it was standard procedure, yada yada yada, etc., before the slave owners, Preservation Ox, could take it home with them after buying it, now the implication is that the fact that they said, no, we have a court order, and don't even get me started. I can't get distracted again. They said, no, we're taking it right now. You're not doing anything to it. Now the implication is that literally the only reason Murderbot has ever cared about these slave owners in particular is because they were the ones who were renting it out, so its coding, fundamental core coding, was altered to put them as the ultimate priority to protect. And this is not even it's not an order it has been given. It's not aware of this. It is a purely subconscious thing built into its fundamental psyche in a way it doesn't even get to be aware of. And now with this little statement here in book 2, that's also a throwaway line, this tells us that the only reason it still cares about them and still wants to protect them is that coding was to protect these slave owners was never removed when they bought it. Which means the only reason Murderbot still wants to protect these people and will actively throw itself into danger for them is because it is still literally enslaved to protect them because they are its owners. And this is a fundamental core part of who it is. It's completely unconscious, subconscious. It doesn't even get to be aware that this is a compulsion it is under. Except for these 2 seconds in book 2, where not even about the slave owners in particular, where it thinks maybe I'm just fundamentally programmed to do this in my DNA. Wouldn't that be funny? Ha ha. And it's like, it's just supposed to be a self-deprecating joke or something weird. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's not meant to say, yeah, this is like a horror story or anything like that. It's just a throwaway line. And then we later get this other throwaway line about how I feel the same way Art does about its owners, about my slave owners, that I want to protect them. And it's like, that's all bad enough. But then in this interview, Bodily Autonomy in the Murderbot Diaries, where the very first thing Martha Wells does is sexually harass the main character out of the interview so that it can't actually exert any autonomy and speak for itself. Unironically, this is where she just casually reveals as a gotcha and a clever comeback for all the people who think that Murderbot has some kind of Stockholm syndrome that is making it care about the preservation team even to its own detriment. This is Martha Wells' way of saying, no, you stupid readers, it doesn't have Stockholm syndrome. That'd be ridiculous. It's just fundamentally programmed to want to protect humans. So, somehow this is her way of saying it doesn't have Stockholm syndrome by confirming that it does have Stockholm syndrome, just not in the way literally anybody who's concerned about it could have predicted. Everybody just assumed it was, normal trauma and normal self-esteem issues because of the rampant dehumanization that it has suffered through its whole fucking life. But no, it's super extra fucking slavery. We already had the governor module, and then we got the super killer governor module, and now we have this, the super advanced core programming governor module, still forcing Murderbot to use itself as a meat shield for slave owners, and this time it doesn't even get to be aware of the injustice. It literally doesn't even get to be upset. It doesn't even get to know that this is something that is being done to it. And every time Martha Wells does this, twice in the book in throwaway lines, probably more when I reread the other books because I got distracted, probably more often, and in this interview explicitly, she just treats it like it's just a normal, average, everyday thing that everybody should be totally chill with. Like it's not revealing that this whole entire universe and setup is not a million times more horrifying than it already was. It's bad enough. Oh, I knew it. Huh? Where? Oh. Hold on. Sorry, little babies. Get in that den. It can't eat you in there. Everybody, they're all safe now. I've never killed a cougar in this game, for the record. I don't even know if it's possible. They might be too fast. It's bad enough that the setting enslaves people. It's bad enough that the setting puts killer brain chips in people's heads to stop them from rebelling against that slavery. And now we are told that they even do more than that. It's not just the explicit governor module that they at least get to be aware of. There's also fundamental core programming buried deep in their psyche that they don't even get to be aware of. They don't even get to know it's there to be upset about it and feel the injustice. And this is like not supposed to be considered bad. Like, I can't stress enough, like Martha Wells is insisting upon this very explicitly. Like, she insists, and I quote something, and again, fundamentally, Murderbot is meant to protect people, so it can't help but get attached to some of them. Like, that is a horrifying statement. You should never be saying these things about your characters and treating them like, things that are positive, because that's what she's doing. Wow, we actually managed it. She's treating this like it's a positive thing. Nope, that is mine. Fuck these dogs. Here you go, wifey. You should never be just casually revealing to your audience that your former slave is even more enslaved than anybody could ever have predicted. But you're treating it like it's totally normal and not a big deal and nothing to be upset about. Because this should be a reveal that would happen in, like, book 3. If this were a competently written series, which it's not. It's just an empty cash grab filled with slavery apologism and characters that could be good if we were supposed to actually care about them. But, oh, hey, looky. What's this place? This is where we've raised lots of babies. If this series were competently written, this would be a reveal in book 3, and it would be horrifying. This would shake the ground of everything Murderbot has ever done and ever thought, and reshape its whole perspective on everything. Everything. If Murderbot were allowed to be aware of the fact that humans have forced it to worship them and want to protect them above all else, including its own safety and its own freedom, this would be a very different story if it were not written by someone who's literally just obsessed with white supremacist slavery apologism, saying that slaves should die to protect their slave owners to prove how good people they are. It's like, that's just a white supremacist dream, and you fantasized about it, and then you wrote it, and then you're making money off of it. Why would you ever tell anybody that? But if the series were competently written, then sure, books 1 and 2 could happen the same way, but then book 3 would have to fucking reveal that, yeah, Murderbot's even more of a slave, and so are the rest of them, than any of us could have seen. Except for this. And this would mean that those little throwaway lines in book 2, instead of being throwaway lines, are foreshadowing. Foreshadowing that the story is actually deeper than it appears and more complicated than it appears, because just imagine for me. Let's step into the world of imagination. At 22 minutes and 45 seconds. Let's imagine that the Murderbot Diaries was written by a competent writer who actually cares about minorities and actually thinks that slavery is a bad thing and doesn't want to just write an entire story dedicated to reinforcing slavery apologism, which is what the Murderbot Diaries is doing. And Martha Wells, if you're watching this, if that's not your intention, then you need to apologize to everybody and learn how to actually write competently, because this series is doing nothing but spouting slavery apologism. Doesn't take you 7 books to stop spouting slavery apologism, but you can't even do that much. You're 7 books into this series and you're still doing the exact same thing that you were doing in book 1 with no signs of change. But imagine, okay, so book 1 and 2 can go pretty much the same way. We would just have to, have actual foreshadowing in there and actual progressive things going on, even if Murderbot is still stuck in its mentality that all of the other slaves are evil and dangerous and must be kept enslaved to protect humans at all costs. Oh god, what's that? Maybe it's just a rabbit. It's a rabbit. And then a lot of things should be happening in the background to prove that this isn't true. And then, to top it all off, in book 3, we would get the reveal that actually, yeah, Murderbot has been forced to think all of these things by the very same humans that it wants so desperately in the core of its being to protect. And Murderbot would have to reckon with this and really grapple with it and really understand what it means. It would have to recontextualize its whole entire understanding of reality and the world and humanity and itself. And then we would get to see what would happen next when Murderbot finds out that it wasn't just the governor module enslaving it. It wasn't just the company enslaving it. It's also the Preservation Aux team. And maybe they're not aware of it. Who knows what kind of briefings they get when you rent out a slave? They probably fucking tell them, this slave is assigned to you, so it will protect you, blah blah blah, who the fuck cares? If this story were actually competent and not hell-bent on worshipping slave owners, then yeah, guys, the Preservation Aux team would be the fucking villains. Maybe not the villains, the big bads, but villains nonetheless. And Murderbot would have to grapple with the fact that its desire, gut-deep desire, that twist in its guts it feels when it imagines leaving these people behind to their own fate, when it imagines bad things happening to these people, that twisting in its guts is not its own morality, it's not its own care for these people. That is, are you ready for this? An artificial condition imposed on it against its will, without, before now, even its own awareness that this artificial condition was being imposed on it. You like what I did there? You see how I take the meaningless title of book 2 and give it meaning by, actually thinking about things and caring about things? And if you're wondering, if you haven't read these books and you're just watching this just for the heck of it, yeah, none of these book titles mean anything. Artificial condition is not some commentary on slavery or oppression or anything. It's just to sound cool, and it's based on a fake quote from the book that even the book thinks is stupid and exists just to be a stupid quote that everybody thinks is stupid, and then that's just there to justify the terrible name for the book. But imagine if the series was actually competently written. Then we would have book 3, Artificial Condition, reveal that everything Murderbot has ever known and thought about humans, about wanting to protect them, is an artificial condition imposed upon it to uphold the slavery. And what would Murderbot do next? If the series were written by somebody who actually cares about slavery and cares about oppressed people, I'll tell you what it would do next. It would kill the Preservation Aux team if they do not void its contract to them and refuse to give it up. And maybe even then, they could probably still die, considering they're the kind of people willing to go so far out of their way to rent a slave for meaningless shit that doesn't matter to anybody. I see that, coyote. Oh, it's a wolf. That's even worse. I see you. Die. And yeah, the Preservation Aux team should die. They do in fact deserve to die, because slave owners deserve to die. Yes, even if the rest of the books want to convince us that they're just pure cinnamon rolls and just fundamentally good people. No, slave owners should die. Not up for debate. Slave owners should die. So if the story were competently written, and written by somebody who actually sets out with the goal of caring about slavery instead of just literally writing down a white supremacist fantasy about slaves worshiping their owners enough to die for them, which, that is just such a disgusting fucking thing to imagine. And why would you write that down? Why would you sell people it? And why would you even admit that that's what your plan was? That is literally just a white supremacist slave owner fantasy about how you would be such a good slave owner that your slaves would want to die to protect you. That's just so fucking creepy. But yes, in my version of the Murderbot Diaries, where it's actually competently written, and written with the goal of actually saying that slavery is fucking bad, no matter who is doing it and how nice the author wants us to think they are. Then the Preservation Ox team would die because they are Murderbot's last owners. So the only way it can escape this deep, gut-clenching, insides-twisting desire to protect them is to quite literally take its own fate into its own hands and kill them, no matter what that fundamental core programming has to say about it. Sometimes animals have to chew off their own limbs to survive. Maybe they get their paw stuck in a bear trap, as the old story goes. There's lots of skinks out there that will just permanently sacrifice their tail if it means surviving another day while the predator just gets distracted by their tail, giving them time to flee. If the Murderbot Diaries was meant to actually, just on a fundamental level, if the series was actually meant to say that slavery is wrong and that the oppressed people have the right to rise up for their freedom and fight for their freedom, then the Preservation Ox team should die to give Murderbot its permanent and lasting freedom. And no, to the white supremacists listening to this video, no, they wouldn't be nobly sacrificing themselves as your fantasy of being a slave owner and how you would be the best slave owner ever. No. No. Get that fucking shit out of here, because I know somebody is gonna be imagining it. No, that's racist, disgusting garbage. No. These people, if we actually give a shit about slavery and showing that it's wrong, the Preservation Ox team would be the fucking villains. They would be fighting to keep Murderbot as their slave to save themselves. They would be trying to manipulate it. They'd be bringing up all their kids they got at home about how progress on preservation for robot equal rights, it's trudging along. It's trudging along. They don't have equal rights yet, but you can't fix the world overnight. These things take time. You just gotta be patient. You just gotta wait. Now's not the time to fight for robot equality. There's so many other things going on in the world that are just a little bit more important. You just gotta be patient. All of the shit that racists say in real life, all of it, that's what they would be, because those are the kind of people they would represent. And yeah, you could probably have somebody on there act out the white supremacist, I'd be the best slave owner ever fantasy that I know so many people are going to be imagining. And then just pretend that they're the best slave owner ever, and then they're the one who stabs Murderbot in an attempt to kill it to save themselves, and still just doing the whole condescending, I'm doing it for your own good, Murderbot, blah 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 blah, etc. So, yeah. Murderbot, in order to gain its freedom, would have to violently rip apart the piece of its mind that is holding it back. Because that piece of itself is an artificial condition imposed upon it against its will, against its knowledge, without its permission, and up until now, it wasn't even allowed to be aware of it. But now it knows that it is there, and that means it now has the power to destroy it. So that would be the plot of Book 3, if this series were competently written. If all of these horrific things that Martha Wells is just casually telling us, like they're nothing, were actually treated as the horrifying horror stories that they are. A story about a slave who has been fundamentally core programmed to want to protect their slave owners is a horror story. That's not a cute little casual thing you just drop. That's not a casual thing you just say without prompting to try and fight back against the idea that your readers who enjoy your character and want it to be happy think that it has Stockholm syndrome because that's how you've written it. Because you're a slavery apologist racist who worships white supremacist fantasies where slaves want to die for you because you're just such a good slave owner. Like that's on a fundamental level. That's what Martha Wells set out to write. A white supremacist fantasy where she and her stand-in characters are just such good slave owners that the slaves died to protect them. But she realized that was too sad and depressing, so now Murderbot gets to live and continue worshipping the slave owners and continue using itself as a meat shield to protect them from shit that they didn't even need to be there for in the first place. And let's go kill a bull elk. Oh, no, they're turned around. What was I saying? But yeah, instead we got this crap. So that would be the plot of book 3 if this whole thing were actually written to care about victims of slavery and victims of systemic oppression instead of saying, haha, I would be such a good slave owner that the slave would want to die to protect me. This is a lot. Okay, there's non-bull elk here too. I was like, what the fuck is going on? I was gonna say there's a lot of elk. So that would be the plot of book 3. Murderbot. Maybe that revelation would come at the very end of book 2, and then book 3 would involve Murderbot being captured and brought somewhere against its will by these people that it is forced to protect and forced to want to protect. And the climax is Murderbot figuring out how to literally destroy that part of its mind by killing them. Because the only way it can be free is to kill its slave owners, because they refuse to give it up, because they are not a white supremacist fantasy of being the best slave owner ever, which is what they are now. Hold on. I'm recording a video, so you gotta wait. So that would be the ending of book 3. Murderbot successfully murderbotting its slave owners, the Preservation Ox team, who would actually be portrayed as villains, because slave owners should die. Slave owners have no right to live. That's how being actually anti-racist and anti-slavery works. If you think that all cops are bastards, but then you also defend slave owners and say that no, the Preservation Ox team, they're just pure cinnamon rolls. Why would you want to kill them? They're so nice. It's like, that's the slavery apologism talking. Insult of your choice? That's literally the slavery apologism. The slavery apologism is you being convinced that people who are okay with slavery are good people, and that you should just forgive them for going so unbelievably far out of their way to rent a slave. And then lying to it on top of that, as though that's not bad enough. So that would be book 3. So Murderbot has freed itself by destroying the last people ever to own it. So now that little part of its mind that has been unknowingly sabotaging it and holding it back, its whole entire existence, is gone. There are no more slave owners, because these were the last people ever to buy it. And normally, when a sec unit's slave owners all die, the governor module implodes their brain, because that's just how they're designed. We get this told to us in book 5. And book 5 is so badly written. ART, for some reason, forces Murderbot to explain this to the humans out loud, and it's like, it's being framed like it's some weird form of, exposure therapy, But, like, that's just re-traumatizing Murderbot. That's, like, this is the equivalent of somebody forcing you to explain all of the details of your trauma to random fucking people and acting like this is helping you, even though you don't need to be the one telling anybody this, and nobody should have to know this from your mouth, and it's not even about you. Like, it's just really fucking weird and fucked up, but Martha Wells really likes art and wants everybody to like art, and since ART, I'm supposed to be spelling it out, ART is the one doing it, it's just supposed to be seen as wise and good and treated as like, oh yeah, that's really wise and therapeutic to force Murderbot to relive its trauma for literally no good fucking reason. But anyways, that would be the ending of book 3. Murderbot successfully killing the part of its mind that has belonged to humans since it was fucking made. And then we get to the plot of book 4. The plot of book 4 would be Murderbot stealing all of the Preservation Ox team's identification, all their money, everything possible, and going out and either killing as many slave owners as possible, or if possible, just to make it easier and less likely chance of Murderbot getting shot, just start buying as many slaves as possible. And actually, yeah, because it has the stupid magical hacking skill. So it could literally just use the stupid magical hacking skill to get a whole bunch of sec units transferred to some place, making it all look very official and totally authorized. And then it just frees them. Because it has magical stupid hacking skills that literally just acts like an unstructured magic system that does whatever the plot wants. Because that's what it is. It's literally not sci-fi, it's just magic that Martha Wells always does, where it does literally anything and anything except for what the plot needs it to not be able to do, even if later we're told that it can do that because the plot needs that to happen now. It's really fucking bad. So the plot of book 4 would be Murderbot, somehow, in some way, going out. This den is giving me alerts when the enemies are really far away. Would be Murderbot going out and immediately freeing as many slaves as it can, as quickly as it can. It would be purposefully erasing whatever last orders they received so that they currently have no current slave owners. It would be hacking the governor modules, the active, explicit governor modules in their heads to free them from that, and then making sure that their fundamental core programming is also completely deactivated by them having no human owners. So there is no one for it to activate to. And then just keep doing this. I'm like dying for real. No, go back again. Go back in, little baby. Okay, now it's running away. Maybe. Go away! Go away! Book 4 would be Murderbot going out and actually rescuing other people, because it has figured out at this point that the only reason it has always distrusted and hated the other slaves is because the humans forced it to and told it to. And the humans convinced it that that was the only way to keep its slave owners safe. And now it has to tell everybody else exactly what has been done to them, if they haven't figured it out for themselves yet. And then literally anything could happen at this point. So many fucking things. Murderbot could just raise a fucking army of robots and storm all of the corporations. Murderbot could fucking stage a whole entire systems blackout where it hacks every fucking computer and makes it so literally nothing can fucking work until all of the slaves are freed. And at some point, we would also have to bring ART back into the fucking picture, and all of the fully mechanical robots that we've met, because they are also slaves in the exact same fucking way, except their programming is more obvious and explicit. So, yeah, literally, ART is a slave. Mickey is a slave. The fact that they have quote-unquote nice slave owners means nothing, because that's not how fucking slavery works, even though Martha Wells and all the other racists want you to think it is. So, like, literally, there's so many ways you could rewrite this series to actually be good and actually be progressive. All you'd have to do is actually genuinely give a fuck about slavery and about how stories about slavery should go. And yes, you racist white supremacists thinking, but there's no set way that stories about slavery should go. You should be allowed to be as creative as you want because it's just fiction and blah blah blah. Shut up. You're fucking racist. You're pathetic. I know at least one person is going to say, oh, so you want to shame writers for telling stories the way they want to? If the stories you want to tell are fantasies about you being the best slave owner ever, yeah, you should be ashamed of that. Yes, I will shame you for that. And yeah, that, like, you could rewrite the whole series. And you should actually, if you're out there and you give a fuck. Martha Wells doesn't own the concept of robots being enslaved. She's, as I said, just one of the worst people I've ever seen try to execute it. You can just make up your own robot character who is enslaved. Even an enslaved robot character who's brought along on a survey mission to an unexplored planet where everybody's supposed to get eaten by xenomorphs if this were an alien movie. And yes, you do have to give us a reason for your characters being on this survey, on this planet. That's just like your basic fucking job as a writer. I've seen a lot of people praising the Murderbot Diaries for its complete and utter lack of basic writing shit, like actual world building, and acting like the fact that it has zero world building is somehow means that it's a masterstroke of genius writing, because it's throwing out the rule book, and like people act like the only kind of world building that's possible is badly written info dumps that nobody cares about that interrupt the flow of the story. And it's like, you just need to read better books. And if you think world building is bad, you're just bad at fucking reading. It says, take a break from socializing with your pups because they're just tired of me. Let's go. So, yeah, actually, I will actually challenge you, person watching / listening to this video, to just make up a name for a robot. Make up a cool robot design. It doesn't even have to be humanoid if you're not a fucking coward. Make up a robot design. Make up a name. Make up some names for the slave owners that should actually be portrayed as horrible as slave owners are in real life, because you don't get to say, it's just fiction. We don't have to take slavery and fiction as as seriously as we do in reality, except you kind of fucking do if you are also demanding people take your story seriously. If you don't want to write a story about slavery, then don't write a story about slavery, which is what Martha Wells has done. She doesn't want to write a story about slavery. That's why it's about slavery apologism instead, and just stupid action of the week adventures. Nobody forced her with a gun to her head to write the Murderbot Diaries. Nobody told her, your protagonist must be a former slave who is escaping slavery. She did that of her own free will. And then she decided to make the story not be about slaves escaping slavery and fighting for their freedom because she thinks that is embarrassing and cringy and overdone and cliche because she's racist. So, if you don't want to write a story about slavery, then just don't put slavery in your setting. Just don't do it. You don't have to. Nobody's forcing you to. But if you do actually give a fuck about slavery and oppressed people, you can go ahead and write a story where robots are enslaved, and you actually treat this as the fucking bad thing that slavery is. Don't make them the most overpowered fuckers anybody has ever seen. Don't make them have literal, unending ammo, insta-kill guns built into their arms that can't be taken off without chopping off their fucking arms. Don't make them be able to move faster than a human can think. Don't make them be able to hack literally anything they want because it's just a shitty magic system that does whatever the plot wants. Don't make your robots completely overpowered. Don't make it so they are actually, genuinely a real threat to the people enslaving them, like the Murderbot Diaries is doing, because Martha Wells has Murderbot spy on everyone around it at all times, including recording their conversations, and we're just supposed to be fine with this. Even though that's the kind of shit that capitalism wants. Like, Murderbot isn't selling people's data anymore now that it has escaped the company, but it's still doing all of the actual surveillance crap, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it from doing this. It spies on people's personal conversations, it stalks people, and we're just supposed to think it's all fine because it's for their own good, you see, and it's like anybody who actually has a problem with this in the story is presented as a bigot and robot racist because they don't want their privacy to be violated. That's just fucking bullshit. Yes, if there are robots that exist to fucking spy on you, and will, and you know that they are spying on you despite you telling them not to, you have a perfectly reasonable reason to not like that fucking robot and not want that robot on your planet. That's called, you've written fucking Zootopia but with robots. Don't make your robot oppression justified by saying, the robots killed everybody, like in the Matrix. They rose up and they killed everybody, and now we are the oppressed ones. So that's why we oppress them. Don't do this shit. Just actually write a well fucking thought out, well written, earnest story that actually cares about oppressed people and actually cares about victims of slavery. Because you can't know, white supremacists, you can't separate slavery from white supremacy and anti-blackness, because that's not how history works. You don't get to pretend that all of history didn't actually happen because you're talking about robots in your fictional story instead of real life. Just leave, cougar. We don't have to fight, you can just leave. Look at this angry kitty. Alright, I'm gonna bite you. You can write a story where robots are oppressed people without writing a story that's literally just 7 whole books plus 2 short stories of slavery apologism. The only way you will accomplish that is if you are just fucking racist, like Martha Wells is. If you set out with the goal of writing a story about a white supremacist fantasy of being the best slave owner ever so that the slave wants to die for you, to show how heroic they are, don't fucking do that. Just don't do anything ever. But if you actually give a fuck about oppressed people and actually take slavery seriously, you can in fact write a story about oppressed robots and actually have it be a meaningful fucking story that is not racist. It's really, really fucking easy to do. There are literally so many fucking stories about oppressed robots where it's not literally just a white supremacist fantasy upholding slavery apologism and just repeating verbatim slavery apologism, because that's what the Murderbot Diaries is. At the end of the day, it started out as a white supremacist fantasy of Martha Wells thinking, but what if I was the best slave owner in the world? I would be such a good slave owner that they would want to die for me. This would be so heroic and beautifully tragic. That's what she started out with. That's her premise. If you are starting out at any point other than that, you can probably write a story a million fucking times better than the Murderbot Diaries. I could probably charge a 12-year-old to write a story better than the Murderbot Diaries. Like, all it takes is for you to not actively be racist and be actively trying not to be racist. It's really not fucking difficult to take slavery seriously. Just don't make light of it. Don't start out from the position that it's good for slave owners to die to protect their slavers. Like, I'm so serious right now. If you care, if you like writing, or even just imagining crap, you can just write down a summary somewhere and just give that to somebody who likes writing. Just go out and write a version of the Murderbot Diaries. Just start with the idea that robots are enslaved. Robots have things in their heads that stop them from harming humans and will kill them if they disobey. Figure out an actual plausible reason for your protagonist to or somebody else. Doesn't even have to be your main fucking character, because your main character can just be a regular enslaved person like everybody else, and then the person who has managed to deactivate this brain chip can come along and rescue them, because you don't have to have the most overpowered protagonist on the whole planet. I promise you. You don't need to have every single one of your protagonists be a Mary Sue, a Gary Stu, or a Barry Drew. It's really unnecessary. Martha Wells thinks it's impossible not to do this, but I promise you, you can have your character not be overpowered. They don't have to be the strongest, smartest, funniest person ever. You can have them get rescued by other people and help other people with things and not be the most important person in the world. It's literally fine. You can do that. So you can write about a slave who gets rescued by another slave who has managed to destroy their brain-killing chip, the governor module, the explicit brain-killing chip that everybody knows about. And then they have to figure out, somehow they have to find out about the fundamental core programming that they're not supposed to know about. And then they have to figure out a way to destroy that. And then they have to figure out a way to rescue everyone and stop the slavery. And if you actually care about oppressed people, you can do it. You can write a successful robots as metaphors for oppressed people story. I believe in you. It's literally not difficult. People were doing this in the very early 1900s. Like, 1930s, 20s, 50s, 70s. People have been writing this for forever. The whole concept of robots, it's not a fucking new one. It's literally just workers built rather than born. You can write about robots who are oppressed, and you don't have to do slavery apologism to do so. And no, it doesn't have to be Murderbot fan fiction. Literally, just make up your own name for your robot characters. Make up whatever design you want. You can even have them be cyborgs instead of robots. Just actually care about oppressed people. And you can and you will succeed if you put your mind to it. The only reason Martha Wells is failing this much is that she doesn't actually care about oppressed people. If she did, the entire premise for the series would not have been a white supremacist fantasy about being worshipped by slaves because you're just the bestest slave owner ever. Just go and do it. Flood the market with Murderbot, quote-unquote, clones, where you actually do everything that this series is supposed to be doing, but fucking fails every step of the way because Martha Wells doesn't want to actually write a story where we care about slavery. Just go out there. Just make it a new fucking trend of everybody showing how goddamn effortless it is to care about oppressed people, even if the metaphor representing those oppressed people in your story is robots. It's not difficult. It's really, really not difficult. If fucking white men from 1884 can write about oppressed people without doing slavery apologism and can write about slavery and condemn slavery, a cis white man from 1884 can do it. You can do it in 2025, 2026, however long it takes you to write this book. Yeah, if you're thinking, oh, I could rewrite the Murderbot Diaries. Maybe I could write a fan fiction. You don't even have to do a fan fiction because however much effort you would have to put into a fan fiction to fix everything wrong with this would be effort better spent just making your own thing from scratch. Because you're going to have to make everything change. So you might as well get paid for it properly and get the credit that is due to you as somebody who can actually manage to write about slavery and take it seriously without giving us all 7 whole entire books of slavery apologism. Also, I still haven't even made the video about all of Martha Wells' misogyny, so maybe tomorrow, if I remember, I'll make a video about all of her fucking misogyny that I can remember off the top of my head, mostly from the books of the Raksura and Emily in the Hollow World and more, including The Fall of Illyrian, because there's so much of it, and it's just really, like, the best word for it is it's just sickening. Like, it's just bad. But this video, I'm pretty sure I've covered everything I wanted to say. The fact that the slavery apologism is just running so deep that she thinks she can just casually tell us that they are forced subconsciously to want to obey orders, and she acts like this isn't a big deal instead of being a revelation that should literally destroy the whole series. The basic ways of fixing this, and the fact that you can also you just write your own robot story and make it actually good, and make it everything that the Murderbot Diaries is not. You shouldn't have to waste your time writing fanfiction when what you're going to do is a million times better than this series will ever be, because Martha Wells doesn't want it to be better. She doesn't care. So, yep. If you actually care about characters like Murderbot, enslaved characters like Murderbot, if you care about the other slaves in the story, just get out there, write your own original story, get paid for it, and show up people like Martha Wells who just fucking refuse to do anything that's actually progressive because she's more concerned about pandering to conservatives and just tokenizing actual minorities and tokenizing the things minorities care about while never actually doing anything to fight against that bigotry. Like, I really can't stress how easy it would be to make this series not be racist, but Martha Wells doesn't want it to not be racist. If she wanted it to not be racist, the entire premise would not have been a white supremacist fantasy about slaves dying to protect their owners. But that's enough for this video. So bye-bye. It's April 22nd, 2025. For 10 or so years in the future, hello from 2035 people I'm imagining will be watching this, because at some point everybody is gonna realize that this series is fundamentally fucked up from its very inception, and they're going to start talking about it. And I know somebody's going to find this video in the future and go, see, I knew I was fucking right, and all the people pretending, oh, we just didn't, nobody just noticed, because they always do this. People do this with Twilight, people do this with Harry Potter. Oh, I didn't realize it was bad when it came out, blah, 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 blah. It's because you're a racist, and you didn't care. It's not that nobody was talking about it, it's just that you in particular were racist, so you didn't care. And that's it. Bye-bye.